Welcome to Creepy Real Stories. While the events you're about to hear are presented without graphic detail, they are still deeply disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Friedel Rhoda had only been gone from home for a few hours when the weight of his decision began to sink in. He wasn't a hardened runaway or a criminal, just a teenager who had reached his breaking point after one argument too many. He told himself he just needed space, time to cool off, a short escape, and Hanover felt like the perfect place to disappear. The city was loud, crowded, and full of strangers. A boy without a plan could blend in easily. No one would ask questions. No one would care. But when Friedel arrived near Hanover's central train station, reality hit fast. The area was overwhelming. Vendors shouted over each other, pushing food and goods into the hands of passers-by. Groups of older teens lingered near alleyways, watching newcomers carefully. Men who looked like they hadn't slept indoors for years occupied staircases and corners as if they owned them. Friedel tried to look confident. He told himself to keep walking, to act like he belonged. Still, it didn't take long for him to realize how completely out of place he was. As Friedel wandered the market stalls, one man stood out. He moved comfortably through the chaos, speaking with vendors, chatting with officers, and watching groups of boys near the station entrances. People seemed to know him. Some even deferred to him. And then the man noticed Friedel, a boy, alone, uncertain, trying too hard not to look lost. The man approached calmly and asked a simple question. "Are you all right?" Friedel admitted he wasn't from Hanover. The man smiled as if he'd heard that exact story countless times before. He introduced himself as Fritz Harman. He said he could help Friedel find something to eat, maybe even a place to stay for the night. Friedel hesitated, but hunger, exhaustion, and fear won. He had watched others speak to Fritz without concern. The man carried himself like someone with authority, someone safe. So when Fritz gestured for him to follow, Friedel did. They walked only a short distance to an apartment building, with narrow hallways and tightly packed rooms. Fritz unlocked the door and invited Friedel inside. What happened after that door closed in September of 1918 is unknown, because Friedel Rotha was never seen again. Back home, Friedel's family immediately reported him missing. Their search eventually led them to Hanover, where someone at the market mentioned that Friedel had been last seen with a man living at 27 Sellerstrasse. Police were slow to act, but in October they finally went to the address. When officers forced their way inside, they found Fritz in bed with another young boy. That discovery was enough to arrest him and justify a search of the apartment. But the search was rushed. Had they looked more carefully, they might have found a severed head wrapped in newspaper behind the stove. Fritz Harman's life had been unstable from the start. Born in 1879 as the youngest of 6 children, he grew up in a household filled with tension. His father was volatile and domineering. His mother was older, overprotective, and deeply attached to Fritz. She sheltered him, hovered over him, ignored warning signs. Fritz preferred domestic activities and spent most of his time close to his mother. His siblings, meanwhile, struggled with crime, violence, and survival. Even as a child, Fritz frightened people. He invented games that involved tying people up. He enjoyed scaring others far beyond harmless mischief. Teachers described him as quiet and polite, but academically behind. He repeated grades and drifted through school without direction. There was also a trauma he rarely spoke about. As a child, Fritz was abused by a teacher. The man was never punished, and Fritz never recovered. As a teenager, Fritz grew physically strong, but emotionally dependent. Attempts at work failed. Military service briefly gave him structure, until unexplained collapses led doctors to declare him unfit. By 16, his behavior escalated. He began targeting younger boys, luring them with food, with gifts, with promises. Arrests followed. Psychological evaluations labeled him incurably deranged. He was committed, then escaped with his mother's help.
For a short time in Switzerland, Fritz lived quietly. He worked. He stayed out of trouble. But the calm didn't last. By 1999, he returned to Hanover. Crime followed, prison followed. And by the time World War I ended, Fritz Harman walked free into a city in chaos.
Hanover was flooded with displaced youths. Police were overwhelmed. Black markets thrived. And Fritz adapted. He began feeding police information, playing the role of a helpful informant. Soon, he wandered the station openly, acting like an unofficial authority figure. And boys trusted him. Fritz approached runaways and commuters alike. He warned them about trouble, offered help, suggested a safe place to rest. Inside his apartment, the tone changed. He fed them, waited, then attacked. His method earned him a nickname that haunted Hanover. Bodies were dismembered. Remains were thrown into the Lane River. And during a time of food shortages, Fritz sold cheap meat on the black market. Meat of questionable origin. Rumors spread, but no one could prove anything. In 1924, children found a skull near the river. Then another. Then sacks of bones. Hundreds of remains surfaced, all young males. The city panicked. Investigators followed patterns, and one name kept resurfacing. Under surveillance, Fritz was caught arguing with a teenage boy at the station. This time, police searched his apartment thoroughly. Blood, clothing, evidence everywhere. Fritz confessed, dozens of victims, so many he lost count. In December 1924, Fritz Harman was convicted of 24 murders and sentenced to death. He accepted it calmly. He was executed in April 1925. His preserved head remained in medical storage for nearly 90 years. This wasn't just a story about evil. It was a story about neglect, authority abused, and how easily trust can be weaponized. You've been watching Creepy Real Stories. If you have a case suggestion, check the description. And as always, thank you for watching.